maybe.
War never changes.
Interplay Entertainment is the game dev and publisher responsible for creating Fallout, a post-nuclear role-playing game, an instant classic which saw great success in the late 90s. Interplay later formed a new division called Black Isle Studios, which created a sequel to the game, Fallout 2, which was also very well received. They had planned to make yet another sequel to Fallout. This time, though, it had a new game engine, a bigger world space, and changes to the combat system. This game had the potential to be much more ambitious, but ultimately, it was cancelled. Welcome back to Games That Never Existed, where in this episode I tell the story of Black Isle's original Fallout 3, Van Buren. Interplay found great success in the late 90s with Fallout and Baldur's Gate, two PC RPGs that are loved by many. However, while their games were doing well and things looked okay on the surface, Interplay was actually getting itself into quite a bit of debt at this time. In fact, things were going so badly that the company actually found itself in bankruptcy court in 1998. To avoid the bankruptcy, the company decided to go public on the Nasdaq to generate some more capital by selling their shares, and the company was able to keep itself afloat and avoided bankruptcy, at least for now. Interplay continued to experience financial problems over the next few years, partially as a result of misguidance from senior executives at the company, and partially because there's heavy competition as well. Nonetheless, games continued to be made, and the company still found success in its titles that it produced. One of Interplay's subsidiaries, Black Isle Studios, was now in charge of Fallout, and after producing Fallout 2, another sequel was beginning to take shape. This game's project name was Van Buren, otherwise known as Fallout 3. The game was going to use a new engine that Black Isle had made for Baldur's Gate 3, another game that never existed. This engine was commonly referred to as the Jefferson engine. It was fully 3D, but unfortunately it was never actually used. Black Isle Studios had planned to include a dual combat system in the game that allowed the player to choose between either real-time or turn-based combat, but supposedly the real-time option was only included due to Interplay's demands. Co-op multiplayer was also going to be included in the game, again because of publisher requirements. This game was beginning to come together, with much of the story locations and concepts being planned out, and a tech demo was developed, and things seemed to be going pretty well until Interplay ran into more monetary issues. After changing to a new CEO, Interplay had continued to experience financial hardship, so much so that they were actually delisted from the Nasdaq due to having too low of a stock price. During this time, Interplay decided to go on a spree of canceling projects and selling off assets in an attempt to slim down and refocus the company. Black Isle Studios found itself on the chopping block, and on December 8th, 2003, the entirety of Black Isle was laid off, effectively canceling all their projects, meaning no Fallout 3, no Baldur's Gate 3, no Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance 3. That's a lot of wasted potential. However, at least for Fallout, the story doesn't end here. Interplay ended up selling off the rights to the series to Bethesda, who, in their time, would accomplish both wonderful things with the IP and create unspeakable horrors. Black Isle's Fallout 3 never saw the light of day, and while Bethesda took both the lore and the story of Fallout in a completely different direction from the originals, some of Van Buren's ideas did sneak its way into Fallout New Vegas. You see, after Black Isle was closed, Several of the staff members from that dev team went on to form Obsidian Entertainment, who are the devs behind New Vegas. New Vegas included a few shared locations with the cancelled project, along with some shared characters and the faction known as Caesar's Legion. Also, the NCR and Brotherhood of Steel war was also present, though much less prominent in New Vegas and reduced to just a few things here and there, instead of being a larger focus like it seemed like it was going to be in the original Fallout 3. Since the release of New Vegas, the concepts and stories behind Van Buren really haven't gone anywhere, and though there have been several fan-made projects attempting to reimagine the lost game, they've always been left abandoned, unfortunately. However, Van Buren isn't like a lot of other abandoned games. See, with most other games that get scrapped, we usually have little more than dev interviews and concept art to go off of. But with Van Buren, we have literally hundreds of pages of design documents available to the public, along with a functioning tech demo. So while the game itself never really got far into development, most of the groundwork and story and technical aspects behind the game were done, and we can actually see that it looked like it was going to be a pretty damn cool game. Based on the sheer amount of locations and how far apart they are, stretching all the way from the Hoover Dam up to Denver, Colorado, it's obvious that this game was going to be quite large. Though, however, it is unknown how exactly they would have scaled up the map in order to cover such a massive distance. Remember, this game was cancelled in 2003, and I doubt the game would have been truly massive compared to today's standards, but I think it's obvious that Black Isle had big plans for this game, and it would have been much bigger than Fallout 1 or 2 because of the new engine being able to push the limits farther than before. The story and locations also seem to expand on the world in great new ways, and I feel like this game would have been really fun to explore. For example, I have been going through the design documents, and based on the concepts, we can see that unlike in New Vegas, where the Hoover Dam is basically nothing but a power source and a garrison for the NCR, in Van Buren, it was actually a fully functioning city, complete with many NPCs, interactions, and even its own little story segment at the end of the game, depending on what choices you made inside of Hoover Dam during the game. Stuff like this is so cool to see, and to be honest, I could actually imagine the dam being like this as a whole city after the events of New Vegas, assuming, let's say, if the NCR won the dam, right? It's cool to think of it like that, right? That they actually built up a city around it and turned it into a real settlement. And I'm still sad that we'll never actually see this in a game, though. And as much as I dislike turn-based combat, I still love the original Fallout games for the lore and the game world that Interplay had created, and it seemed that Black Isle was doing a great job at building off of that based on all these documents. And I do admit that Bethesda has done some great things with the game series, you know, like letting someone else make a Fallout game instead. But as much as I love the gameplay and modability of Bethesda's titles, the lore, the world, and the general atmosphere and mood of their games just isn't quite the same as the original. It doesn't have that kind of grit, that kind of bite, you know? The music's not as desolate. It's not... There's just something different to it that's not there. We'll never know exactly how Van Buren was going to be, but look, I know it would have been at least better than the bastard child known as Fallout 76. I know that much. I mean, hell, look, even Fallout 4 is decent enough, I guess, but 76 takes a dump all over everything that Fallout stood for. And that's not even including the ridiculous retconning that made this horrible game possible. It's like they never even looked into the lore of the originals. Jesus, shame on you, Bethesda, come on.
Tell me lies. Oh no, no, you can't disguise. You can't disguise.